record a session. This is something you should do when you're working with children and when you're teaching and so on. So if you use this, what it means is you've got that safety net. Should somebody say something or do something inappropriate during a meeting or allege something was said, you'll have a recording and you'll have a record of it. So this is something which you really should be doing. There's obviously going to be some privacy concerns about videoing and maybe having the children on there. However, this video will not be stored on your computer. What happens when you choose to record video, as we're doing now, is it goes to Microsoft Stream, which is another app as part of Teams and all their other suite of things, and it will be saved in a data center somewhere in Europe, not on your device. And then once it's finished setting it up, it will send you a link to that video, which you can then choose to share or store, do as you please. And then after a year or so, of course, you can then delete all those videos off. Okay, so lots of little options here, which is really useful to know about here in the middle. Okay, what I'm going to do now is we're going to hop over in a moment to a couple of dummy accounts I'll be using today. So what we're going to go through today is how the actual class teams work, what's inside them, how we use them for teaching. And as I said, we're going to be covering a lot of ground today. But we're going to try and keep things as simple as we can, keep it down to the basics, because Teams has a huge amount of stuff it can do, and there's no point in trying to dive in and do all sorts of new stuff until you're actually comfortable using it. So the idea of today is just to give you that first taste of it and to get you started. So what I'm going to do now is I will share my other screen now. As I said, you can share desktops. I've got 2 monitors, so I can choose which desktop to share. And I'm now sharing my other monitor. When you share a screen, you can always know if you're sharing because you'll see a red box outline around the screen, so that lets you know which screen you're sharing. So today we're going to be using two accounts. We're going to be using this one here, which is a dummy teacher's account. This is an account made by Microsoft for this kind of use. And we're also going to be using a dummy student account. Okay, so let me just switch over to that one. So if you're not sure which one we're on, let me just, click over there. If you're not sure which one we're on, you can always look up here in the corner and you'll see the little icon, a little picture. This is Al Fredrickson. This is a student or a pupil account. And if I switch back to my teacher one, you'll see the little logo there for Turn It On there in the corner. Okay, first thing to say to do with your teams is that you don't need to do any work on setting these up at all. Under the DFE program, what happened was your school administration, somebody in maybe a school business manager or somebody in that department would have got in touch with us, and they would have given us access to your MIS systems such as SIMS, Integris, Arbor, ScholarPack, Bromcom, whatever system you're using for your registration of children and all that information. And what they would have done is they'd have given us a link to that, and our system would have quite simply synced up to that and taken all the information and allocated all the children, all the teachers, all the classes from there directly. So nothing for you to do on that, first of all, so don't worry about that part. Now, looking in my teacher's account here, you'll see I have a few different teams. Now, if you're a primary school teacher and you're only allocated to one class, then you will have initially one staff team, which will be for all the staff members in your school to communicate and store stuff and so on. And you'll have one class team, which will be the class you teach. And that class team will include all the children in your class and any other adults who work with you in that class. If you do work in multiple classes, like this teacher here, you may have multiple classes here which you'll have access to. Equally well, if you're a secondary school teacher, you will likely be a member of quite a few teams because, of course, you're a subject specialist and you teach across a range of year groups. Okay, so that's just a little basic bit about the different teams you'll have on there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to be focusing today on the class teams. As I did say on Thursday, if you want to come back, or for maybe next week and have a look at the staff side of it, please do that. So we're going to have a look now inside a class team. So we click on here. Now inside our class team, when you first get your brand new one, you will have one general channel here. Now the channels are kind of like subdivisions in a class. So for instance, the general channel will include everybody who's in this class. If you wanted to, you might, as time goes on, I wouldn't advise doing this to begin with because I would advise getting used to how it's set up, but as time goes on, you may want to add new channels, maybe for different focus groups you have. So for instance, I could put on here, add a channel, and let's just call this one focus. That would be accessible to everyone on the team, but you could still actually point children towards that channel to do separate things you want them to do. You could also, if it was a team and you didn't want everyone else to see all their work, you could actually set it up as a private channel and then you can actually add the individual children you want to be in that channel for work to go to, and then all the other children in the class wouldn't even be able to see that channel existed. So different ways of doing channels. That one I've just set as a private one, but generally you probably wouldn't do that. So I'll just take that off again, and we'll look at what you'll be seeing as you begin with. So as I said, the idea of channels is channels allow us to sort of differentiate and group the children to different areas. In your staff team, you'll probably have other channels in there like SLT or year groups or class group channels where different teachers from the same year group can communicate and share their work and so on. But as I said, we'll just have a look at the general channel here for now. Now, over on the other side here, oh, one other thing actually, when you first set it up, you might want to personalize this a little bit. So up here, there's different ways you can do this as with all these things on Microsoft. You can click on there, and instead of having NT for new team or new test class here, we could choose one of these pictures. If it was something really relevant to your class, maybe you'd chosen a great famous historical figure, someone inspirational like Nelson Mandela, you might choose to actually get yourself a photo of Nelson Mandela and upload that, and that could then become your icon here. Okay, I'll just choose one of these random ones for now. Let's have a mountain top because we're trying to achieve and aspire and do all those lovely things we like to use nowadays. So that's my new icon, something personalized. So within our team now, we've got different areas. We have our posts area, and this is effectively a bit like a notice board. Our files area, and that's where we can store information we want to share with the class. Our class notebook, our assignments, and our grades. And we'll be going through these throughout today. So I'll start off with the posts part. Now the posts is really useful for getting information out there to the children. So for instance, or one actually thing I should say, it's when children set this up, it's a good idea to make sure, I'm in Al's account here if you can see, make sure they turn on their notifications for their own team, because that way when you put things in, it will give them a little ping and it will give them a reminder that something's happened. So if I see here, channel notifications, they're not on automatically, so I'm going to turn these on now. And I'll even include replies. And so whenever a new team's on, notifications aren't turned on by default, so you need to turn them on yourself. So if you're in a staff team, you want to make sure that you turn on your notifications for the general channel and for any other channels you're included in. And then with your children, you need to make sure you tell them to turn on those notifications. It will still work perfectly well without it, but it's better if they do get those little things coming up to tell them. So, as I was saying, we're going to start off with posts, and posts is a bit like a notice board, somewhere where we can share information with the whole group. Now I'm on the general channel. Each channel would have its own posts and so on, but this is something to go out to the whole class. Now, two ways we can post something to the whole class. We can either just start typing in here, and when we press enter, it will go through just like on a messenger app. But I would recommend on all these things on Teams, whenever you're posting something, press on the A here with the pen on for formatting, because when you do that, it gives you a lot more options. So suddenly this becomes a mini word processor, and it also adds a subject line which will be in bold to make it stand out more. Also, it won't send when you press enter, because I've done this various times where I've tried to send something I've been typing, come to a second paragraph, I press enter and the message sends, and then I end up sending it in different pieces. Whereas if you go into formatting, the message won't send until you actually press on the send button over here. So I'll add in a subject. That's my new class. I'll put welcome to the new team. And we'll put something here. Please tell me something good about the last 2 months. So what we're doing here is just a little icebreaker for the children to give them a chance to share something and actually join in with the team. So I'm just going to send that one. So that has now posted that message out to everybody in the team. If I switch over to Al's account now, into his new test class, I can see just there already a little pop-up message came up telling him that something had happened in that team, and you can see up here there's a little red circle here on activity telling him that something new's happened, and there it is. It's telling him that post was on there. So Al might want to add something on here. I have become a great baker. You'll know flour's been selling out everywhere, so why not? And Al can join in on that now. And if we go back over to the teacher account, I can see straight away in real time, Al's reply has popped up here. So like I said, this could be a nice little icebreaker for everybody, just to get everyone onto Teams and just to give them a chance to say hello or something. And that posts area is going to be really useful for sharing anything with all the team. Next over here, actually one thing I should have mentioned on here, when you're in the message, it's not literally just for typing here as word processor. Try to get away from the idea of thinking of Teams as the way you work on paper, because it can do so much more. You can also put in web links here. You can also put in attached files. You can use smileys, giffies, emojis, all sorts of stuff. But the great thing is here, like I said, it's not just about typing. If you want to share a website with the children, if there's a particular file you want them to read and see, if there's maybe you're putting in some new policies or maybe expected use and expected behavior in Teams meetings, all of that stuff, you could pop something in here and that would be sent out to all the children in the class immediately. So next we're going to hop over to files. Now, the files area is a little bit like if you have, imagine it, a children's shared area on your school network where children can share their files and you can see them as well. It might be that your school is just set up for children to have their individual logins and everything saved in an individual place, but a lot of schools do have a shared area. And this would be like a shared folder on your school network, except it's a shared folder for your class. And what that does mean is that anything you put in here will be accessible to all the children in the class. So anything you want them to see, any documents you want to work with, brilliant, you can put them all in here. You can just quite simply drag and drop. It tells you here, read-only files go here. Students can read these files, but teachers can edit. So you can just drag and drop things into here. So if I put a new folder in, for instance, let's call this one Maths. Once the folder's there, I can just drag and drop files from my computer and they will go straight into this file, which will then be accessible to all the children in the class. You can also create files right in here as well, just the same way I did before. I click on New and I can go to Word document. I'll just call that Test. And what will happen now is this is actually open up Word inside Microsoft Teams. So I'm not jumping around between different apps. It's the web version that will open up, so it doesn't have quite as many features as the full installed version on your PC. However, it does have more than enough for most people's use, and you should be fine with it. The other benefits of this is that you don't need to save anything. If you go to File here, you can see there's no save option. There's a Save As if you wanted to download a copy or rename it, but because this is all based on the cloud using the World Wide Web through the internet, everything you do on here will be backed up and saved every couple of seconds. So if your computer shut down, if you lost your Wi-Fi connection, if something went wrong, your file would still be there and safe and you wouldn't lose anything. Okay, if I just close this now, you will see now that file has now been created inside Class Materials and inside Maths, and there it is, the test doc is there already. Okay, so once again, this is a place where you only put files which the children should see. In your staff team, that's a great place to start putting all your planning and your class lists and all your stuff in there, because that will only be accessible to staff and it will allow you to collaborate with your teammates. But this area is only for things for your class to see. Right, the next bit we're going to move over to now is probably the most important part of this. It is the class notebook, and this will be your main teaching tool. Now I will be switching over to a different team in a minute, but when you first use your class notebook, you will see it's not been set up yet. So that's why I've set up this extra team so you can actually see what the setup looks like. So first things first, you just simply click through. It's not from an existing content, you're making a brand new notebook. So click on blank notebook. The first screen which comes up is very important because it actually explains a little bit about how the notebook's laid out and what's in it. So we'll take just a moment to go through that. So here's what you get with your new one. We have a collaboration space, and this I'd often try to kind of think of a simile maybe or an analogy for this. And I'd think about when you're working with a group of children and they've got a piece of sugar paper and they can all write on it and they're doing a piece of group work. It's all accessible to everybody, and that's what the collaboration space is. Any files or any documents or any pages you put in here can be edited by anyone in your class, children or adults. Okay, so great place for, as it says, for collaborating, for brainstorming, for getting ideas down. And you may even decide within your class later on in your test class here to put in different channels, such as green table, red table, blue table, and you can actually then get them to collaborate. You could send out a message and ask them to collaborate on their own little sections in there. So anything in there is for everyone to be able to edit and change. The next one is the content library. This one, the children can see what's in there, but they can't edit it, delete it, or do anything with it. This was the area I'd compare to really being a bit like a photocopier. This is where you have your original copy, and from that original copy, you can make 30 copies to go out to the class, and that's what this content library does. You can put your original copies in there, then you can choose to distribute them to all the children in the class, but that won't touch your original. They'll each have their own copy, just as if it were being photocopied. Okay, next along, we have the student notebooks. Now, one of the great features of this class notebook is, as a teacher, you won't have to go looking for the children's work. within your own staff, within your own teacher class notebook in here, you will be able to get into every child's work in the whole class. So you don't have to go looking around for stuff. You can simply find their name, click on it, open the section, and you're in. And that will also allow you to leave comments, to annotate, and to add stuff in as well if you need to. So now we've got a little bit of understanding about how it works. We click on next, and this is where it will now ask us how to set up the children's notebook. Now, the notebook, probably the best way to think about it is a bit like a ring binder with coloured card dividers inside it and then pages between those. So this part here is where we put in our dividers, our different sections. So I'll have a student name, and being a primary school teacher, I think I'll keep mine simple. We'll have English, maths, homework, and we'll do topic in there as well. Okay, of course you might want to add more to there. You can add section here, you might want to put in science or other things as well. It's really up to you. The initial setup, you can do this, you can delete them, you can add more sections, use less sections. It's entirely up to you. So I'm just going to go with these 4, and then I go to create. And what happens now in the background in Microsoft's data centers, they're doing all the hard processing work, not your computer, because everything here again is based in the cloud. And what's going to happen now is it's setting up a notebook for every single child in the class and setting up your notebook too. So here it is. It's now opening up my notebook. Inside the notebook, they do have pages in here explaining bits and pieces about it. If you press on the little arrow here, it will take you to your navigation pane. And just like we said before, we have our collaboration space, we have our content library, and I've only got one child in this class, Al, and I can see Al's notebook here and get into it. And if I go in from the other side of it, from Al's side of it, let's just pop in there. I can go back into his teams and choose the right team. So I'm in new test class 1, go to class notebook, and he has now got his class notebook set up in just the same way, except of course, the only thing he can see on there is his own notebook. He can't see anyone else's. If you click on there, and here we are. Content, collaboration library, content library, and Al's own pages. Okay, they do have these little bits of help in here as well. When it's first set up, you can delete these later on, but it does have some frequently asked questions, and it does have some help in there, which is worth having a little look at. Once things settle down, you might actually want to get rid of some of these sections. Collaboration space again, you'll see here, it has a page in here about telling you what it is and how it works, but you can later on delete that. Right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to hop over and we're going to start using Rowling Team. You can see there, J.K. Rowling, I've selected a different picture to make it a bit more interesting. And I will now pop over to my teachers team and into Rowling class. Now I'm using this one because because we're pressed for time, I have already added some content to this notebook, which we'll be able to use and distribute and so on. So I'm going to open up my class notebook. Again, you see the little arrow pops up here, which you use to bring up the all the different side tabs of information. This class has only got 6 children in. Your class, of course, will have about 30 in, most likely. So what we're going to do first of all, we're going to have a quick look at the collaboration space. Now, the collaboration space, as we've said before, is for sharing stuff with everybody. So I've got my different sections here, topic, English, and so on. I can also, if I go in here, I can add in new sections, I can add in new pages, I can select a different color for my tabs if I like to do that. So if you want to personalize it a bit more. If later on you decide after you've initially set up that you want to put in some more different tabs and so on in here, you can actually go into class notebook and you can go into manage notebooks. And this takes you back to what we saw at the beginning. If you wanted to put in more things, you could do that. Okay, just like we did before, but I'll leave that for now. We don't need to see that. So back into here. And again, back in. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look at something in the collaboration space. Now, to add things in here, you can choose the area you want to go to, whichever one you wanted to go into. And then if you want to add a new page, it will automatically have an untitled page in there. Number facts. As soon as you type in the title at the top of the page, that will instantly show up here as a title. If you want to add more pages into a section, you can just right-click, new page, and you're off. One of the important things which makes this different from kind of paper-based working is that when you're using the class notebook, it's actually much more like using smart notebook software on your smartboard. So whether you're used to using smart notebook or maybe Promethean, Active Primary, something like that, this works like that. It's not just a word processor. There's so much more to it. So what I'll just do here is I'll just give you an example. Let me get rid of that. So what we've got here is an example of something I did before. I put in something, so if you're doing an initial lesson on a topic, maybe you might want to do a bit of brainstorming with the children and see where they want to take the learning. Very much like when you do the idea of post-it notes and you say, what do you want to learn? All the post-it notes go up on a board, you collect them up and you can use that to direct your learning. Or similarly, if you are using something like the sugar paper idea I mentioned before, same idea. So you can brainstorm and collect ideas here. So what I've done, I've created one about the Mayans. I've asked them to write a sentence. I've put in something I'm interested in knowing already. So I want the rest of the children to add to this. So what I can do here is I can actually put a post and tell them about it. So I can put a post here and I can start a new conversation and I can say, please add your. I can tell them where to visit the page. I'm going to look at another way we can do this to make it even easier, but please visit the, I can't remember what it's called now, Mayans page in the topic section of the collaboration area. I won't keep on typing there because it'll take too long. Of a collaboration area, and open this up and add your ideas, okay, to help us with our learning, whatever you want to say. What you can also do though is something I really encourage you to get used to using, is use a link. Now links, if you're not familiar with them, are quite simply things you click on which take you to another web page. You use them all the time. If you're on a website, every time you click on an active link on there, it takes you to another page. And that's quite simply everything that's stored on the internet, if you didn't know already, has its own unique address. And a web link can be used to send somebody to that unique address. So what we'll do now, we'll just go quickly back into my notebook. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually bring up the address for that page. So what we can do, if we want to get the address for this page, if we go to open in browser here, oops, open in browser, it's going to open up Smart Notebook, the class notebook we've just been using, because within Teams there's lots and lots of different apps, such as class notebook, such as Word, as you already saw, Excel, so many different things we can access, and they're all rolled together in one place with Teams, which is what makes Teams so useful. Everything's bundled together. But now I'm actually in here, I can see the full address for it. So if I click on here and I copy that address, you can do a right click copy, or you can press Control-C to copy. Right, I don't need that anymore because I've just copied the address. If I go back into my posts now, I could tell them where to go, or I could say, or click this link. Now to activate that, this is the same whether you're using anything really. Links always work the same way. You highlight the text you want to link. You click on the link symbol, which is nearly always the same, which is two little chain links together. And then it will ask you what you want it to link through. And you simply paste what you wanted in there. Press insert, and that's now a live link. So if I send that out to the whole class now, I'm in my general channel here, I'm in my posts, so when I send this, it will go out to everybody in the whole class. I can now switch back over to Al Fredrickson's account. You can see the messages popped up telling him there's a new message in the general channel. I'm already in there, so if I just click on this link now, this will actually open up class notebook for Al. So if you give it a moment, here we are. Al wants to add something to this, so he's just going to go to edit notebook. Now, if I was just in Teams and using this, I wouldn't need to do the edit bit because it's actually opened up class notebook as a separate tab. I just needed to click on edit there. Now, as I was saying before, this isn't like a word processor, it's like smart software. So anywhere you click on the screen will bring up a text box. And once those text boxes are in there, if you want to be longer, you can stretch them out and so on. You can also, what makes this really nice is you can also insert things. So you can put in a table, you can insert a file, a picture, a web link. You can, even if you've got a microphone there, you can record audio and have audio files sitting there on the page as well, which is great, of course, for those reluctant readers or reluctant writers or people who are less confident with using their words, especially the younger ones. So I'm just going to put in a reply here from Al. So I'll just put in LF. I would like to know what food they ate. Obviously Al's a teenager, so he's thinking with his stomach, as they all do. So I'll put that in there. Once it's actually in there, you can of course do a lot more with it. If you wanted to make it bold, to stand out, change its color and so on, you can do that. You can put in different font sizes, all the different stuff you'd expect, different font styles, all the stuff you're used to using through lots of different apps. Okay, so all that's there for you. Now, because this is all web-based, that is now updated in real time. I don't need to go saving this or do anything else with it. If I go back into my teacher account here, and I go into my class notebook, and I can see there you are, in real time, Al's comment is already up there. So collaboration space, great place for sharing ideas and for collecting ideas. You can also, if you wanted to, put in things like Microsoft Forms in there, which we'll have a look at a bit later on. You can put a link for those. So back to our class notebook now. We've had a quick look at collaboration. Now we're going to have a look at what probably the main one you'll use will be, which is your content section. Now in the content section, I've got things here, and I would like, just like that photocopier analogy, I would like the children to all have their own copy of it. So I'm just going to go to my English one here, and we're going to do all about adverbs. Now what I've done here, here's one I've prepared earlier, as they might say on Blue Peter. I've put in a little bit here with a title telling them what I want them to do. And then I've got click here for help with adverbs. Oh, actually, I'm in Al's account here, if you'll excuse me, which is why I can't actually do anything with it. I'll just go back into my teacher account and I'll shrink that one. So give me a moment. Right, so I'm going to go into English here and all about adverbs. So this was a page which I made up already. What I did, I mean, this is quite dull, obviously your stuff will be a lot more interesting, but what I did, I found basically an adverbs worksheet. I copied it and pasted it into here like a picture. It literally was copy and paste, and then you actually have got options once it's in there to crop it as well and things, which is really useful. I put in what I want them to do, and then as I was saying before, that idea of not thinking of this as being a sheet of paper, I put a link here as well. Because one of the really nice things about this is we can help with independent learning. So the children can actually click on this link I've already put in, and I've linked it to the BBC Bite Size Key Stage 2 section about adverbs. So if they're feeling a little bit less confident, they can always watch this and go through this to help themselves and get that bit of independence. And I made that just the same way you saw before. I found the web page I wanted, BBC Bite Size Adverbs. I copied the web address, and then I simply wrote in click here for help with adverbs. I highlighted it, and then I inserted a link, and I pasted in a link there. Okay, so lovely feature which helps with independent learning. Okay, I also put on here 1 point for each correct answer. And so once that's in the content library, I can actually share that. So I go to class notebook and distribute page. Now what we're going to look at today is just distributing it to the whole class, but you can, if you want to, if you've got differentiated work, as you get more comfortable with this and accustomed to it, you can send it out to individuals or groups. You've got also cross notebook distribution, but we're not going to worry about that for now. We're going to keep things simple. So we're just going to distribute the page to the whole class. So into distribute page, it's going to ask us now where we want that to go, what section we want it in. Now I want it to go into the English section. I'll click distribute. And what that will do now is it will push out a copy, effectively make 30 copies of it and put one in each child's English section. Now for some reason, when I'm doing these presentations, I work with a with a private browser, which allows me to have 2 different accounts open at the same time in the same browser. And for some reason, it does seem to take its time occasionally going across. So I'm just going to leave that for now, but we can see Al's one is in there. It could have been from last week, actually. We'll just come back in here. There we are, that's done. So that's now sent out a copy to all the children. And again, what we could do if we wanted to alert the children to what's going on, we could put a post out there to tell the children, please try the adverb activity. And then down here, we could give them the instructions what to do and where to go. Visit, the English section of your notebook and follow the instructions. Okay, we'll post that one out again and back over to Al's account. And there you go, you've got the pop-up already telling Al something's in there. He can go to his activity, he can go to there, and that will take him straight to it. So he can see now he needs to try that activity. If he goes to his class notebook, and he goes into English, hopefully it'll be there. It does for some reason have a delay. Oh, here it is, all about adverbs. So there you are. Al's got his work already. And now what Al can do, he can get to work on this. If he wants to, he can get started. So here he is, he's happily highlighting away. This time, because I haven't opened this up as a separate link in Class Notebook, you can see this is within the Teams area, so he's not having to click edit or anything, it's just automatically in, and he can happily go about his work and so on. Now, once he started doing that, again, if I hop back to a teacher's account, you will see that in real time, Al's work is going straight into this so the teacher can access it. So if I just hop back in over here, open up my sidebar, my navigation panel, go into Al's one here, give it a moment, go into English, all about adverbs, and there it is. Al's work is already showing up there. Now, because I'm a teacher, I can edit everything. So if I wanted to, I could actually put in comments and stickers and all sorts on here. So I'm just going to choose any old sticker at random because I'm in a hurry. But of course, you might want to choose something which, particularly if you're working with younger children, of course, as we all know, younger children love stickers. So you might want to put in stickers on there which represent something or other. I'll just move that over a little bit. But you can also put in comments here. So if you've got a touch screen, you could use Draw and you could actually handwrite stuff on there. Or if you wanted to, you could simply put in a text comment on there. Great start. Al, don't give up. And of course, if you want to make that stand out, just like we have on word processors, just as you've already said you're used to doing, you might want to choose a different script to make it look a bit better. Obviously, that one's not very readable, not a very good one to choose, but we can put all that stuff in there to encourage Al along. Okay, and again, Al, if we flip back to his notebook now, you'll see that in real time that's already come up in Al's notebook. So the lovely thing about this is you get that chance for the to and fro between teachers and students. It's not just a kind of a bland thing of putting work out there and then the children not knowing anything, you not knowing anything. It gives you a chance to comment and so on. So what we're going to have a look at now, let me switch back to my teacher account again, is we're going to look at assignments. Now assignments, all the stuff we've just done here, we could actually do this through assignments as well, and some teachers do choose to do that, or some choose to just use it for homework. Okay, but either way is fine. Now assignments and grades, these two sections actually work together, because whenever you create an assignment, it will also create a section here, a column in grades, for the teacher to be able to see what's going on and who's accessed and so on. Now there's various ways we can use this, so we're going to look at a few different ways of using assignments now. So we're going to create one. It's an assignment, and what we're going to do here, I talked before about putting stuff in your files area to use with the class, so we're actually going to use a file which I've already stored with the class. So for this one, for instance, you might want to use it in terms of flipped learning. So Teams isn't just about distance learning. Teams is great for flipped learning. So for instance, if you wanted the children to prepare for something before a lesson, so that in the lesson they already know the material and you can dive straight into it rather than having a big intro in the lesson, this is one of these areas where Teams is really useful. So I'm going to add a resource here. Now the resource I've already saved in the class files area. So if I go into my Teams here, it's in my Rowling class, it's in my class materials, I think I put it in there, it's in English. Oh, there it is, the magic box. Okay, attach that. So that is now attached that for all the students in the class to access. So I can put in the title, the magic box, right. Okay, instructions, read the poem. You would put in your magic box ready for tomorrow. Okay, so put all the instructions in there. Now, if it's a points one, we can put down a number of points so that when it comes up in the grades, we can say how many points they've got out of 10 or 15, 20, whatever you choose it to be. It does have a rubric section here, something which Americans are quite keen on using, something we don't really use that word much here, but if you're not familiar with them, if you wanted to add a rubric, it's simply a very heavily broken down success criteria, so children can see if I met this own criteria only, I'm poor. If I met this one as well, I get the fair. If I meet all the criteria, I'm excellent. So it is quite a nice way of using things. We're not going to use it now, but if you want to, that feature is there. Who this is assigned to, it's assigned to the whole of Rowling class, but if you wanted to, you could actually edit that and send it to selected students and so on. It doesn't have to be for the whole of Rowling class. I do have other classes that I could have assigned it to. So next we have our date and time. Quite simply, if it's a primary school, let's say we're going to do the lesson on Thursday, and they have to have done it by 9 o'clock in the morning, because I'm not going to put a late evening in case they stay up too late working. So once I've got that in there, I've got my title, I've got my instructions, I've got a document which I stored in my files area already. I can assign that. And that will now push out a copy of that to all the children along with a notification. If I switch over to Al's account here, I should see something coming up in just a moment. There we are. So Rowling's class assignments come up. Again, you can see the activity here, popped up to tell him, and there it is. You can click on that. And now this is where, again, that idea of two-way traffic is really useful. If I click on it to view the assignment, and then I pop back into my teacher's account, I can go to grades now, and it will tell me which children have actually even opened it and viewed it. So I can see here, Al has viewed the assignment. None of the others have yet, but Al's top lad, he's always working hard, so exactly what I'd expect from him. He's a wonderful student. So it's really useful, particularly with the home learning. There's always that worry that some children aren't engaging for whatever reason. Perhaps they don't have a good internet connection, perhaps they don't have devices, perhaps they're not being supported at home. Any number of reasons they might not, but something like this would be a very easy way for you to see a pattern of somebody who's not engaging, and that will perhaps merit a phone call home to see if we can support them in any way. So really, really useful feature here. So I'm going to pop back now into Al's account again. So Al's opened up the assignment. He can now click on the resource, and this will open up the file which is stored within the team. So Al's now got this here. He can read the magic box. Again, getting away from that idea of it just being paper, I've actually put a link on here as well. So if you've got a reluctant reader, or maybe somebody who's a much better auditory reader or so on, you could record yourself, or you can find a link to somebody reading the poem. I found this link of Kit Wright reading his own poem on BBC. So he's got that access there. Now, when he's finished reading it and he's got his ideas and he's thought of what he wants ready for tomorrow, he can close that and he can click on Hand In. It will give him some little nice video image here, some little GIF ready to give him some sense of achievement. If I flip back to my teacher's account now and into grades, I can see now that Al has completed the work and handed it in. Great work, Al. If I wanted to on other ones, it says open student work here and return. I can return to let Al know that I've seen it. Open student work. If I want to put some feedback on there, I could say, well done, Al. Looking forward to seeing your ideas. Post that, return that. And now if I go back into Al's account again, Al's got his little note message popped up here. That's been returned. And that he's got some feedback on there as well. That lovely bit of to and fro between children and teacher. So that's using an assignment to attach a file you might want to work with. Next, we're going to look at, in the same way we did before with the class notebook, at getting my children to work on a page within my notebook and distribute it to them and so on. So I'm going to go back into my assignments. So go back here and I'm going to do a new assignment. I'm in Al's account at the moment, so I'm going to go back to my teacher's account, close that, and I'm ready for a new assignment. So back into assignments and create. I'm going to do an assignment. Now this time we're going to use a page from our class notebook, and it's going to distribute it in just the same way it did before. And as I said, you may decide actually this is the way you want to do all your work on here. So it's entirely up to you. So I'm going to add a resource straight away. I'm going to go to a class notebook. Next, I choose where it's going to come from. It's coming from the content library. And this time we're going to do, let's have a look, a day in the life of a Mayan child. Attach. And I'm going to put that into their topic area. Okay, so that's what's going to be distributed as if it's a photocopy for each one to work on their own one. It's going to go into the topic area of each of their own notebooks. So on here, imagine, let's do to my farm, diary entries for the Mayan world. Okay, we can put our instructions in here. Something along the lines of imagine yourself a day in the life of a Mayan child. Where would you start your day? What would you do for breakfast? Where would you go next? What would your chores be? You can put in lots of details here of what you want them to do. You can even put in some links here as well if you want to give them some help. If it's one with points, again, we can do that. We've got the option for rubrics for date and time. I'm not going to do all that this time, but I assign that. And that's now pushed out a copy of that to all the children in the class. So if I flip back over again into Al's one, it should be coming through any time. Give it just a moment. As I said, occasionally there's a bit of a delay using a private window. There you go, it's popped up. So he's got a new assignments popped up. He's got a notification here. He's got one in chat there as well, actually, from what came through before. So into here, click on his assignment. So view assignment. Now, just like I did before, if I were to flip into the teacher's one here, it would tell me he has opened it. Next, day in the life of my own child, he clicks on there and it will open up automatically in his notebook. Now, again, make this more interesting. You know, I put at least one little image in it. I've got a link in here as well to help him back to that BBC Bite Size website if he's stuck for ideas. I could put more stuff in. I could attach files in here as well, with maybe an example version I've made already if I wanted something for the less confident children to be able to model their work on. So down here he can do it. So I woke up at, and so on and so on and so on. So he does his work, he writes his diary entry, he finishes it, he closes it, he hands it in. Again, we get some little graphic up here. Sometimes it's an ice cream, sometimes it's a rocket, a jellyfish, all sorts of stuff. I go back into my teacher account now, and I go into my grades, and I can see on here, on my next one that's come up, Al has handed it in. So I can go to his work, open student work, and just like before, I can see what he's done, and I can add feedback in here. Great work, Al. I felt like I was there with you, and so on. Okay. Again, you can, if you want to, you can handwrite on here, you can circle things on here, you can annotate on here, and then you can return it when it's all finished. We didn't do any points on this, we don't need that. I can return that work to Al. And if I go back into Al's account again now, he's got a little notification, his work's been returned. And so here we are. Great work, Al. He'll get all the feedback he wants on there, and if he opens it, if you tell him to, he can see any annotations you've put on there as well. Okay, so that's a quick look at using assignments in two different ways, using it as a file stored on your team and using it for pages in your class notebook. Next one we're going to do is look at using it with Microsoft Forms to do a quiz in there. So I'm going to go to Create again. This time I'm going to choose quiz instead of assignment. Okay. Now, Microsoft Forms, if you haven't used it before, it's a bit like using something like SurveyMonkey or WordWall if you're familiar with those. What it does, it allows you to make multiple choice or answer quizzes as well, which are another really good way of setting stuff out there. Now, I'm going to make a new form simply because I want to show you what happens. Now, this will now open up Microsoft Forms, which again is an app which is included in Teams. So you can use Forms, which are great for collecting survey information. Again, you might want to use this with that idea of collecting ideas for where children want to take the learning as well. And then we can do the quiz, which we're going to do here. So let's just call it New Mayan Quiz. If you want to add a description here, you can. And these are things which are great for assessment for learning and assessment of learning. They're really good for identifying things like misconceptions, because once you've actually put the quiz in, on the teacher side, you have the questions editing side and you have the responses side. And as the answers, as the children fill in the quizzes, you will have two different things there. You can see their individual quizzes and see how they did as individuals, or you will also have a load of pie charts on there. And for instance, if most of the class gets something wrong, then you'll know perhaps that's a misconception you need to revisit and readdress. So we're going to add some new questions on here now. Multiple choice or text, they've got rating and date here, but really these are the two you're going to be using. I'm going to go for multiple choice. What was the main food of the Mayans? Okay, down here we got our choices, tomato, potato, potato, and then we can add more options as well. Corn, oops. Now, the nice thing about doing these is you can make them self-marking as well to save yourself work and to give the children instant results. So corn was the correct answer, so I'm going to tick on that one. I can tell them that's worth 1 point, and then I can add another one. What shape were, oops, Mayan temples? Oops. Same thing again. And you can put in lots of options here. It doesn't have to be 2 or 3. You could have 5, even 10 if you wanted to. So let's have tower, pyramid. I'll add one more, stone circle. Okay, it's already put in 1 point for me. I can change it if I want to. I click on the right answer again. And I'm not going to add any more on that. but of course you'd want to add quite a few more. So I'll close that now. I'll go back. Now I've created a quiz, I can go back to my create a quiz, and that will give me all the quizzes I've already created to choose from. So I'll put in a new My Own quiz and next, and that will now generate the same screen you saw before for setting up an assignment, except it's already added the resources in there and so on for you. Okay, you can put some instructions in here if you want to, and it's already got the points in there. Again, the same things here, assign the class and so on. I assign that, and that will now push out a link to that quiz for all the children in the class. If I hop over to Al's account here, you heard the ping, it's come up again because I turn on the notifications. Here it is. Al can now go to view assignment. Again, this will tell the teacher that he's opened the assignment and at least had a look at it. And it's odd, hasn't attached. Let me just go back and do that again. So I'm just going to pop back into my teacher account again, and for some reason that didn't add on there. Let me just edit the assignment. So it didn't put in the resource there for some reason. So let me just give that another go. I'm just going to delete that assignment, put in a new one. So I'm going to create a quiz, new My Own quiz, next. There you are. So there was a glitch before. You can see now it's actually put in the document which should have been there before. It's put in the attachment. That's what went wrong. So I'll assign that again, back into Al's account again. Just wait for that to pop up. There he goes. So click on there, view assignment, which will now show the teacher that he has viewed it. And now he clicks on the actual piece of work. And unlike the teacher side, he won't see any of the other stuff here. He will only see his own quiz. He puts in his answers. Al's a great student. He knows what he's doing. He's been studying. He submits it. Straight away, he's got that instant feedback. He can view his results. You can see he got them both right. He can celebrate and be happy. If I go back to the teacher's one now, that will also automatically hand it in. If I go back to the teacher's one now, into grades, I can see I've now got another piece of work here, and I can see Al's returned it. If I want to, I can open the student work and have a look. Give that a moment to open up. That's the wrong one, my mistake. I do apologise. Just click back there. So back into assignments, into grades, and have a quick look. Yeah, the new My Own quiz, that's the one I should have looked at. So I can go into here, open student work, and that will show me his individual breakdown for the quiz and so on. If I wanted to, I could actually put some feedback into there as well. Okay, so really useful, really quick way to get stuff done. And of course, once you've got your grade area here, it's a really nice feature to be able to look down and see how everyone's done very quickly as well. Okay, with the My Own quiz, if I want to, if I put some comments on there, I can return that. Just that will give Al a notification that it has been looked at. And if I put comments on there, he can see it. Right. Whew, it's been quite a whirlwind today. I appreciate that. So thank you for hanging in there. So that's a quick look at assignments and grades. A final little thing I'd like to cover, I am trying to zoom through this because I appreciate how busy you all are, is going to just quickly about setting up lessons. If you're going to do live lessons with your class, live streaming, to do that, you go into your calendar and you set up meetings with the class. Okay, so I can go to new meeting, or if I want to, I can choose the date and time I want and just click on there. Okay, I can put on here lesson about the Mayans. Now here we can either do one for selected children in the class. We just start typing. All of their names will already be in your address book. So as soon as you start typing the name, they'll go in there. So you can put them in individually, or if it's a lesson for the whole class, you can choose the channel. Now, as we said before, the channels are like subdivisions, which have all the people in them, or selected people in them. If I go to Rowling class and the general channel, that will now send out a meeting invitation to everybody in the class. Okay, I set the date and time. Down here, I can add details about what we're going to be doing. So maybe an agenda for the lesson, what the learning, what success criteria and learning intentions are, and maybe little bullet points of what we'll be covering during the lesson. Once we've done that, we can send that out to the children. That straight away generates an invite for everybody. And if I go to Al's here you are. Oops, if I go into his feed, it gave him a little notice already that he's got a new lesson due. He can click on there to see the details of the meeting without even having to go into the calendar. It will take him straight to it. And then when it's time for the lesson, he can just click on join. Really, really simple. A few things I would say about doing your lessons with the class. Before you start doing them, get an acceptable usage policy out there. Get a document out there about etiquette in there, and also get permissions, get parents' permission, because chances are during some of the meetings children may be showing their faces, they may be talking, so really you need to have a permission from parents before that started, and something signed as well about the children saying they understand the behaviour and the etiquette that's expected of them, because of course it can be quite a temptation with something new and novel to get a bit overexcited and a bit silly, and really expectations will be the same as class. Also, it'll be worth putting in some ideas there about, I'll just turn off that screen share now. Also, it'll be worth putting in some ideas there about how the meeting's going to work, or how a lesson's going to work. So things like, for instance, I will be presenting and I want you all to turn off your microphones and your cameras while I'm presenting. There'll be times for questions where we'll stop. You can tell them about the chat function within the meeting, how they can post questions in there. You can tell them about how they can raise their hands as well, as we looked at before. Let me just bring that back up again. So you can tell them about the chat function where they can post questions during the meeting. You can tell them about the raising hands bit if they want something which they're really unsure about and want to interrupt. And you can tell them about why you ask them to mute their microphones and so on, which is quite simply that some people might have the volume turned up, or they might have things going on in the background. It can be a real distraction for everyone if the microphone's on when somebody is leading the lesson. Equally well, if they've all got their cameras on at the same time, it could be a distraction as well, of people making funny faces or grinning away. And also, some people have very poor internet connections where they live, and the more people who are streaming video, the more bandwidth it uses up, and the harder their computer will have to work, and they might actually get quite a broken up signal. So by turning off all the other video feeds except for one, most of the time it will give everyone a better experience. Now, I think that is pretty much it for today. As again, I have posted in here this link. Please do that, use that link if you'd like to go back and see it. What I'll do now is we'll put aside a bit of time for questions and answers. So if you would like to ask any questions, feel free to unmute your microphone now to ask, or to use that little chat function and type it in. If you don't have any questions and answers though, I would say thank you ever so much for coming along today. I really appreciate you giving up your time. This isn't something which I would advise diving into full steam. Take it at baby steps. Start off with a little meeting, maybe your very first online lesson you do that as a kind of an expectations, to just a navigation and orientation around Teams, and introducing the children to it and expectations. And then maybe just try sharing one document. Just take it one step at a time, and chances are once you get used to this, you'll find it's a really useful tool, and you might start coming up with all sorts of other ideas and areas you want to explore. Microsoft are continuously adding more ideas and more bits and pieces to this. They've just done another release today of some of the new features they're putting in, so they are listening to feedback from teachers and they are updating. Oh, I can see questions just popped up here from Caroline. In the quizzes section, can you record audio and use the quiz as a spelling test? Oh, great question. I've never tried that before, actually. They do have, I believe, if we go into the quiz, they do have Immersive Reader, but I'm not sure about whether we can actually record the audio. Let's just have a quick look at that. Because the trouble is with Immersive Reader, it will still have what's written on the screen there. So I'm just going to share my other screen again. And what we'll do now is we'll just pop over into the teacher account. Oops. And we'll try setting another assignment, and we'll see if we can drop audio in there right now while you're here. So back into our Teams, back into our assignments, we'll create a new quiz. And new form, new quiz, add new. Right, I can't see one for audio here. Could perhaps try a file upload. So what you could try doing there is actually recording an audio file. Would be a bit fiddly, I think, probably, but I can't see why it wouldn't work. Again, it's not something I've been asked before, not something I've tried before, but if you did want to do that, if you've got a microphone on your computer, or if you're using a tablet or a phone which have a built-in microphone, you would be able to record audio files and then upload them to that, which could actually work. So that's one way I think we could work around it. Right, so let's have a quick look. Any other questions in there? Okay, so if you don't have any other questions, thanks ever so much for coming along today. I'll hang on for another minute or so. If you do them, please pipe in. Otherwise, I'll say goodbye for now. Thanks very much for coming along. I'll stop recording at this point. And